Ladies and gentlemen, Thom Singer.
My first memory is not a birthday party or a trip to the zoo. My first memory is me, 3 years old, wrapped in a sleeping bag, convinced that I am gonna die. You see, I was born into a family where I was the youngest of 4 boys. God save my mother. And at the time I was born, my brothers were ages 10, 12, and 14, which meant by the time I was 3, I lived in a house full of teenagers whose whole purpose was to torment me. Now that's not fair, my brothers are great, but let's just say they had a little fun having a baby brother, and my first memory was on a family vacation to a very small beach house. So small there weren't enough beds, so my brothers had to sleep in sleeping bags in the living room. Now I ask you a question. What is cooler to a 3-year-old than a sleeping bag? Well, the answer is nothing, so I would wake up in the morning and think I'd missed the sleeping bag party. I would want to go play with those sleeping bags. I would build tent cities. I would pretend that I was camping. And my first memory was I crawled to the bottom of a sleeping bag, and the boys zipped me up in it, then they rolled me up in it, and then they proceeded to toss me to one another. And then they told me we were going to play rocket ship. And they told me they were putting me on the top shelf of the closet. And they warned me that if I moved, I could fall off. I could break my arm. Or I could die. And then they left me to go play on the beach. And I did what any 3-year-old would do in that situation. I screamed, "Mom!" And my mother did what any good mother would do. She came running in to see what was the matter. And I said, "Mom, I am on the top shelf of the closet. The boys put me here." And my mother didn't overreact. She didn't get mad at my brothers. She just said, "Oh, sweetheart, you're on the living room floor." And I said, "No, I am on the top shelf of the closet." And my mother said to me, "You are on the living room floor. Trust me. Roll out and see." So I was scared, and I wiggled, and I moved an inch, and I wiggled some more, and then I committed to the roll. There was no thud. There was just my face on shag carpeting. And I looked up at my mother, and she smiled at me, and we both started to laugh. And she looked at me and she said, "Always remember, just because you believe something is true, or somebody tells you it's true, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is." So the story could end there. However, we all of us, still crawl into sleeping bags. We just trade brothers for bosses, report cards for performance reviews, and schoolyard bullies for that little voice in our own heads. Oh, I have heard many a top shelf story from myself or from others over the years. You're not good enough. You're too late. You're too old. However, those times in my life when I've succeeded, the times in my life that I changed careers, that I took the stage, that I loved people, or that I tried again, the success didn't come because the fear went away. The success came because I heard my mother's voice. "Thom, you're on the living room floor. Roll out and see." So I tell you this story because right now, for many of you, there's a story playing in your head. There's something that is holding you back. Maybe someone told it to you. Or maybe you've told it to yourself so many times that it has become hardened as truth. Don't let it decide your future. In fact, the next time you're in that position, remember a caring woman kneeling next to a crying kid in a sleeping bag, and hear her voice. Just because you think something's true, or someone tells you it's true, doesn't mean that it is. You might be on the living room floor. All that's left to do is commit to the role.